can't do. Ted is actually my accountant, and a few quick plugs for him since he's doing this freebie for us. I know I spoke with one person who mentioned his accountant doesn't return calls or too busy right now, and I've never had that issue. I will say I'm happy with the service I get because he does more than just my numbers. He definitely kind of helps me out with some things and has actually saved me quite a bit of money the right way with some of the tax things that I didn't know. I always tell folks my degree's in business and I know just enough about taxes to ruin my taxes. So that's why we hire professionals and they stay up to date. And I don't know if you knew or not, but just last night they changed the PPP program again on us. Some things in our favor, some things I guess you need to consider, and Ted will go over all of that.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody and inviting me. Hello, everyone. My name is Ted Eulinger. I'm a CPA. I've been a CPA for longer than I'd like to admit. And we're actually seeing a lot of challenging issues come up here in 2020. I went by a sign at a local business and they said, you know, it's time to reboot 2020 and uninstall it because we have a virus in it. And, you know, this virus has been very detrimental to businesses across the board. I can't think of any of our clients that has not been impacted by this one way or another. And, you know, really the only people, you know, booming in this time are grocery stores. You know, you would think also doctors, but that's contrary to common belief because all the elective surgeries have been closed. So a lot of the doctors really are slowing down. And as you probably read through the news, they're actually closing a lot of the hospitals up here in Cleveland because of lack of demand. But, you know, this is something that has wide-reaching implications for all businesses. And, you know, as John pointed out, what you want in your accountant is not just someone that's going to take your information sometime in January and February and put together a tax return for you, but you want someone that's going to be a partner with you. And that's, you know, one of the things that I always bring up to John and like the rest of my clients is, you know, we have a lot of business acumen as CPAs. We get to see a lot of different businesses and, you know, we've been through a lot of this before. You know, COVID-19 is not something we've been through, but, you know, it presents a lot of challenges. And, you know, like I tell my business owners, these challenges are really opportunities. And how you take care of those opportunities, you know, is going to determine how your business is going to be, not only in the short term, but the next 5 years. So it's always good to have someone, you know, on your side that's going to be a trusted advisor and not just talk about the tax consequences and how to save money, but also something to bounce ideas off of. And, you know, CPAs are also mentors for our business owners as well, too, that, you know, we have a lot of different business, like I said, and we see it and, you know, just try to coach you through some of the issues, you know, obviously up to the business owners and everyone to execute. But, you know, we can help work on a playbook that meets your needs. So
one thing we talked about just a little bit ago is if somebody is still considering the PPP program, they can still apply, but that time's running out, correct?
Yeah, John. So, you know, one of the legislation that got passed last night, one of the things in there was there are going to end the PPP applications on June 30th of 2020. So if you have considered it or are considering it, you know, I would encourage you to take a look at the PPP program. You know, not only is it ending shortly and you need to kind of make a decision, you also need to remember that it's not an all or nothing, right? So you can apply for the loan, and if you do not meet all the requirements for forgiveness, you actually now have 5 years to pay that back rather than 2 years. And the interest rate is 1%. So there's not too many loans out there that you can pay back in 5 years at 1%. You know, hopefully you can get it all forgiven by meeting all the requirements, and they've actually lowered some of the requirements to get that forgiven as well too. So beforehand it was spending 75% on your payroll. Now there is 60%. So 40% can be spent towards your utilities, towards your mortgages, or any debt incurred prior to February for your business as well too. And in addition to that, they've extended, instead of trying to spend all this money in 8 weeks, where we actually had a client that we were going through today and had a meeting that their PPP ends tomorrow. Now it ends in 24 weeks. So you have a lot more time to spend this money on what the Congress is intended for, which is payroll. So a lot of perks there for this. And if you don't spend it all, like I said, you got 5 years to pay it back at 1%. So it's a pretty generous program that the government is offering due to the shutdown for the last month and a half, and also the consequences, coming out of this over the last month and a half.
That brought up another question that I had for you with the PPP loan. Now, so if you don't meet the requirements, I know they were talking about that none or all or nothing would be forgiven at one point. That was being tossed around. Has that been dropped down yet, or is that still not sure?
No, it's not. Like I said, it's not all or nothing. So what it is you got the 75%, requirement, what it was before, John. Now it's dropped down to 60% that needs to be spent on payroll. In addition to that, you got 24 weeks to spend all that money out. So you got a little bit more time frame. One of the things that they did keep in there is you have to have the same full-time equivalents by June 30th. So that was one of the other limitations with the PPP plan, is that some business owners were unable to get all their employees back. One of the things that you read in there, it just talks about full-time equivalents. It doesn't say the same employees. So if you had 5 full-time equivalents and one individual is a little bit lenient as far as, not wanting to come back and hesitant and so forth, it doesn't stop you from hiring another individual into your business to get to that 5-time full equivalence. And maybe that individual will work out better for you, or it's a better fit. But that's one thing as well too, that we do see some businesses hiring other employees that have been reluctant to come back, to work. So as long as you have that by June 30th, that's one of the qualifications that you have. The other thing that's in there as well too, a lot of people think they get the PPP and they're the only employee, or they have 2 employees, and it's great to pay yourself more money, right? Who doesn't want more money? Everybody wants more money, and the government's passing it out, so why can't I take more money? Well, unfortunately, you can't. The first certification that you have to make is that on the loan forgiveness application is that you did not pay yourself more with the PPP money than you did in any 8-week period of 2019. So, for those of you that have given yourself a raise, in 2020 and things started off well, you got to look back, and you don't want to get caught paying yourself too much money through this for the fact that you have to certify that you didn't. So, there's a lot of little nuances inside these applications, and a lot of smart people have looked at it as far as all our business owners. And one of the things is, what we always say is consult. So you should be able to consult to, a tax expert or someone that has, the business acumen. And this is what we're talking about as far as a partnership, is that someone's there for you to help consult on this, so that way you don't trip yourself up and cost yourself a lot of money. And we'll talk about a lot of money when we get into the EIDL loan here shortly, and the little nuance. If you've signed those and you haven't seen the little fine print in there, it's a nice little kicker for the government if you do not follow the rules.
Yeah, and I actually want to hear that one, because I did get both. Just so clarification now, so easy numbers. So I got $10,000 PPP, and I only spent $5,000 on payroll. So then the remaining $5,000 is repayable, or because I didn't spend at least 60%, the whole thing now is no longer forgivable?
So it's going to be a portion of the 5,000 that's going to be back. So because you didn't meet the 75%, so there's going to be a reduction of that amount for the, that. And then, if you had the same full-time equivalents, that's also calculated in there. And there's actually a worksheet on the forgiveness application that walks you through that. And, trying to drop the numbers in the right bucket, with any government document, it is very confusing, even though it's only 2 pages. And probably only about a dozen lines to enter information, but you want to be careful as you enter this because this is your opportunity to get this loan forgiven. And if you took it out and you had to repay it, that wouldn't be such a good thing, especially if you followed all the rules.
You can do both, get the EIDL and the PPP program.
That is correct. We have a lot of clients that are applying for those. The big nuance there between the two, John, is your PPP loan can be forgiven. There is the forgiveness available to that. And when you think of the EIDL loan, most people got an advance. That advance money that you got is completely forgivable as well too. There's no application for that to forgive that that amount. And then obviously as you applied for that, you come back, and a lot of people are now receiving this week the EIDL loan application, and everyone thinks it's spam, and then they open it up and they're looking at what the number is in there. It's a very large number that they're getting for a loan. And I have a lot of clients calling me on a daily basis telling me, is this a joke? Is this spam? Is this a scam? What is this? I can't believe they're willing to give me this much money in a loan. So be careful when you open it up that it is coming from SBA.gov. It takes you to the website. You'll create an account, and they'll guide you through. And it's a very, very easy process to finish the final steps on your EIDL loan.
So, yes, and one on that, the EIDL, even though it's kind of taking a back seat to the PPP and all the media and stuff, you can still apply and still get that money, correct?
That is correct. So we have people, starting to think through this, and we have a lot of people that have waited to apply for the PPP loan, and actually it was a good strategy for them. Granted, they took the risk of it running out twice, but as the economy starts to open up and businesses start to open, you're able to bring your employees back and get a lot more productivity out of those employees than if you would have taken it, say 2 months ago, and you're paying employees just to spend some of the PPP money, which some businesses have. So if you haven't applied for it, you may want to consider applying for that PPP loan, because there's a good chance that you should be able to get a majority, if not all of it, forgiven.
Now, if you were financed through the original program, now, do you need to fill anything out if you want to change to the new structure, or is it kind of how does that work?
It's just that the law has changed, and you're now got to abide by the law. It's no different than you're driving in your neighborhood. One day the speed limit's 35 miles an hour, and then the next day they come take that sign down and put it up as 25 miles an hour. So no change on your part as far as you got to be a law-abiding citizen, and you got to drive 25 miles an hour rather than 35.
So I automatically now can spend 60% on my payroll and 40% on my office rent or building mortgage and interest on loans. And
and then also your utilities as well too.
Yes.
One of the things in the EIDL loan is, a lot of people are getting these loans and they're paid back at a fixed interest rate of 3.75% over 30 years, and they deposit that money into your account. When you get the paperwork to sign for this, you'll notice that you need to use this for operating expenses. So if you think to yourself, well, I haven't really been paying myself over the last couple months, and it would be nice to get, a $10,000 check, because I haven't been paying myself, you can get caught up into a lot of problems. And when I say a lot of problems, one of the things that you sign off for on the EIDL loan is if it's not used for operating expenses, the SBA is able to call that loan early, and there's a 1.5 multiplier to kick in as far as the penalty for that. So said differently, if you get a $100,000 loan and you do not follow the rules and you're 1 year into it, the SBA basically can come back and tell you, hey, we're going to call this loan early, and in addition to that, we want $150,000 rather than the original $100,000 that we gave you. So, there is some strings attached to this. Everyone thinks that, this money is just out there for the taking, but it's really to assist you, and that's how you have to look at this as business owners, is that this is to help pay for your operating expenses to help you stay in business.
Now, I know a question that came up a lot. People had asked me, and again, I know just enough to get you in trouble, so I always say ask your accountant. But And I don't know, the IDL money, are you able to use that to pay business debt as well, like consolidate, or is it supposed to go toward day-to-day operating
So it's it's
expenses?
it's for the operating expenses.
Okay.
Obviously, if a business is in, having cash flow issues and need to pay, debt, say for example, on a mortgage or something, and obviously if you're not paying your mortgage, I'm sure the landlord and the bank is going to want to evict you out of there. And there's nothing quite like trying to find a new place with your business and so forth. So that money is meant for operating expenses, John, and so it's meant to keep businesses open, keep the doors on, and keep people employed, rather than a detrimental, what we've seen, the historical unemployment rates since the Great Depression. So it's just really trying to keep the doors open for businesses, and this is a nice lifeline that the government is providing.
They mentioned that initially they were going to audit your transactions to make sure that you were compliant with everything, and then they came back with that odd, hey, if you didn't get what $2 million, we're probably not going to be digging through. What was that all about?
So what that was in reaction by Congress to public companies taking PPP money. So this was really for small businesses, and a lot of people were up in arms that a lot of large organizations, such as Shake Shack, Ruth Chris. The good news is everyone could be unemployed, but we can still go to Ruth Chris and Shake Shack. So, they got to love this country for that. So, a lot of companies took money. One of the other ones, the LA Lakers, took money as well too. So a lot of those organizations, put that money back. It's just fascinating for the fact that we've had this conversation with some of our more public-facing clients and say, can you take this money, and what will it look like in the newspaper if you take this money, for the fact that yes, you are eligible, and just because you are eligible to take some of this money, does it really reflect well on your business, or how's it going to reflect on you? So, a lot of these public companies taking that money, as you can imagine, people were uproar over this. Congress is in uproar. So what they decided is they put a cutoff on there that basically anyone that was taking $2 million or more in this money is automatically going to get audited. And those under $2 million were going to get a free pass. So I would imagine the majority of the people on this call, and probably all the people on this call, were all under $2 million of taking PPP money each. So you still want to maintain your records, so that way if the bank asks that for you, you have proof showing you not only your 941 reports, but you're also your utility bills, or a lease that you may have, or a amortization schedule from a loan that you have. It's always good to have that information. You may never be asked for that information, but if you ever are, it's nice to just pull it out and say, here's the information, have at it. We've done everything and complied to the letter of the law, and that will help you sleep better at night and rest your head on that pillow knowing that you have that information.
That just means they're not going to audit you, but you still need to provide all the documentation for making sure you hit your payroll and you put the money in the right place, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to go through this process with your bank. Your bank's going to look at the information, and obviously they want support, because if they ever get audited on any of these by their regulator, they want to make sure that they've done their due diligence. So, you're going to have to show your 941 reports. So for all of you out there, those are your payroll reports that you submit on a quarterly basis. Obviously, for those that are self-employed, you'll have to provide other information, for the payroll piece, but you'll show checks that you have written to yourself. So, or if you've been transferring money electronically, you want to make sure that you show money that is being transferred electronically. You want to be able to support and tie something back to the money that you've been taking for. You want to, I know I'm an accountant, but you want to account for the money, and you want to show how it went from A to Z and all the steps in between, because the last thing you want to do is get caught up on some little technicality and have to pay this loan back.
But if they're paying people as a 1099 employee, that does not count as a payroll expense. Is that correct, or is it changed?
Correct. So when you think about it, this is another conversation, you should be having with your accountant as well, too, that we see a lot of audits even before this. is around who's an employee and who's not an employee. So you have people that are 1099 contractors, and by the very definition, they're not an employee. So that's not payroll, because employees are the ones that are on payroll. And in addition to that, the IRS, a lot of people think that, well, I'm too small, I only have 10 employees or 20 employees, they're not going to look at me. But this is one that they obviously want to show that the employment records are higher. So the IRS actually, if you go out to their website, has a lot of different tests that you have to meet between being an employee and a 1099 contractor. And, rule of thumb is, if you're supplying somebody with all the tools, you're telling them where to go, when to go, and how to do it, they're probably not necessarily a contractor. They're probably an employee. Said differently, when the guy comes over my house, the plumber, to fix something, I just point them to what the problem is. I don't supply any of the tools or tell them how to do it. Yes, I get to tell them when to come. We agree upon that, but I don't do anything more than that. But if I was sitting there handing them the tools and say, well, I think you should go in here and replace this pipe, and I think it looks like a bad coupling, probably an employee. So, just some things to consider and not get caught up in some of those traps out there with this. And that's why, you want to make sure you're not only doing what you're supposed to as a business owner, to drive your business, that's your passion, but you also want to make sure you stay compliant as well, too, with all these little things that are out there.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And now we've kind of been chatting about the EIDL. We did have a question from Jeremy. He did get the EIDL loan through as an independent contractor. And his question is that going to show up on his credit report? Because they did a credit check. He hasn't seen it on the report, but he wants to know if that's going to affect his debt-to-income ratio on his credit.
Well, and I think that really varies depending on how they report it. And Jeremy, we haven't seen anyone, get this yet, and people are just starting to get these loans and so forth. But if it's entered through the business and through the proper channels, one would be hopeful. It's like having a credit card in your business name where, yes, you are, liable for that, but it shouldn't show up on the credit report. But I think, time will tell as far as how they're going to report this. And, it may take some time to be reported because you won't be the only individual. There'll be millions like you in the same situation. So, less than that, that's probably what is expected. And therefore, you're not really going to draw too much attention to yourself. So it's really the individuals that get these loans and say to themselves, well, I didn't pay myself for quite some time, and therefore I got to make it all up today. And you don't want to make it all up today because you're drawing red flags as far as showing money transfer from one account to another account if you do have that. And, that's a whole nother story.
So with the EIDL, it would not be advisable to use that to reduce credit card debt.
Well, the question is what is the credit card debt related to?
So, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, is it business expenses that you incurred, over the last 2 months because you're not able to basically, get an income because everything has been closed down. And well, hey, I have my internet on there, I have my website on there, and it's automatically hit my credit card, on these types of expenses that, I use to operate my business, my cell phone, for people to call, my phone system. And I still, have money on there that I put, purchase of equipment that I use in my business. And hey, those bills haven't stopped, and they're not going to stop until it's paid off. So, using this money, for paying down the credit card, that is absolutely what this is intended for, is for your operating expenses. And, when you think about that, that's what that is your operating expenses. Everybody has a telephone. How else is someone else going to get a hold of you to hire you? You also have a presence maybe on the internet. So, I know we do as well, too. That keeps scrolling down there. And, there's a monthly fee associated with having a website and being maintained and, by some professionals. So absolutely, you can use this money for the credit cards. But, you want to make sure that, hey, I went out there and had a nice big meal at Delmonico's, baby. You don't want to, use that money for that because that's, personal expense. But that goes back to the conversation that I was just speaking about, that you want to make sure that your business is set up correctly and you are separating yourself from your business and your personal expenses on the different credit cards. And, that just makes it a lot more easier to justify all the expenses going to a credit card if you can demonstrate that, if you ever got asked.
Yeah. And so just to make sure I clarify, so going into this, I have a business account credit card and it had a $5,000 balance on it. I could, as long as I can justify, that balance was all business expenses, use the EIDL to pay that off and should be kind of sitting okay. But as long as it's all separate is the key. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm going to kick in real quick. Even as an independent contractor, or if you do it for fun on the side, a separate business account and a separate credit card makes it so much easier for everything. Ted, did you have anything else that you wanted to hit up at the end here to close it out?
No, I just tell people, be thoughtful as you go through this, and take a look at it and have a strategy, have a plan of how you're going to use this money when this money comes in. If you haven't taken, the PPP loan and you're starting to ramp up now, might be the time to consider this. And, even if you have to pay back some of that money, it could help you here in the short run. So, my best advice is come up with a plan, come up with a strategy, look at what's available to you, see how that's going to help you and impact your business, and, take advantage. These are what the programs are there for. These are for small businesses. This is unprecedented times. I never thought in a million years that our country would shut down for a month and a half and people wouldn't be able to go to their own business and earn a living. But, that has happened to us. And, the government is trying to respond by offering these programs to help people get by. So think pragmatically through it. And if you're on the fence, my suggestion is take a hard look. It probably can benefit you.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Ted. And again, folks, please feel free to reach out if you're looking for an accountant, or if you want to schedule a session. They're not all freebies. Tonight was a gift, but definitely reach out. He's been very helpful to me, very educational, and the way you've heard him speak tonight is the way he's been speaking to me when I had questions. So definitely, he puts it in a layman's terms where I have an understanding. Again, folks, thank you all so much. Thank you, Ted, for your time. I am going to go ahead and close this thing out.